The next presenter, ArminWiebe, also knows Mum from her days in the credit union, and more recently has run into her in Bethel Place. He spent some time here too. He was also raised in southern Manitoba and spent some years in Gretna. His best-known writing is the very funny The Salvation of Josh Siemens and Murder in Gutenthal. That's a thriller. And others. His stage play, The Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven Blotz, is being produced by Station Arts Center in Rostern, Saskatchewan this summer from July 8th to August 7th. For details, just Google Rostern, Station Arts, Wiebe, Blotz. You'll find the details there. With a little bit of luck, this summer, if Mum is up for visiting some of her cousins in Rostern, and I wouldn't bet against it, I think we may take a road trip this summer and see this play, as well as visit some cousins, one of whom just turned 103, and we found out about 2 weeks ago that she was sort of on her last legs. Well, she's up and around and outside, and who knows what's in the future for Mother and her cousins. Getting back to Armin, his latest book is Armin Shorts, Little Fictions, and he'll be reading from the story Mary's Creek. Armin, here it is. You need a stool? Right here? Welcome.
I never did meet Mildred in the credit union.
This is great little fiction.
I believe my father had an account there in the 50s, but I never did. I think I've seen Mildred at Bethel Place, but I only met her this evening. My connection was really Greg, whom I met in 1957 when we took violin lessons from Lloyd Siemens in Altona. I don't think the lessons did us all that much good because neither of us are fiddlers, but anyway. Mary's Creek is one of a number of stories in which Sustya Kaler is telling her grandson, Caudle Kaler, who was the teacher's son, about her life. And in this story, she's talking about the early days of when she met her husband, Trail Kaler. Did I ever tell you that your grandfather lived in a Zaudeshend? Usually the Oabada stayed by the farmer he worked for, but not Trail Kaler. He was Ian Coppish that way, independent, as if he had to prove he could do things alone. But why would a young man, hardly 20 years old, build himself a sod house to live in? Maybe it's the same reason that people who live in nice houses with furnaces and air conditioning drive into the bush so they can sleep on the hard ground in a tent and cook outside with the mosquitoes. I mean, I did it too with your parents when I was almost 80 years old, and they took me along to Whiteshell. That was the first time after the farm that I was in such dark that the stars shone bright enough to be the eyes of God. Your mother and father were sleeping already when I crawled out of the tent, and I sat on the picnic table bench and looked up at the sky, and I felt Trail sitting me beside with his arm around, pointing at the pictures the stars made in the sky. And it was almost like we were sitting in front of the sod house the night he pointed to the Little Dipper and said that from now on we would call it Sustya's Shaptya, or Sarah's Dipper. But that wasn't the first time I saw the sod house. No, The first time was the day that Trail Kaler showed me how to coo to a mourning dove. Your grandfather had me by the hand, and he led me through the bushes along beside Mary's Creek. I had never walked so far in my life before, but I didn't get tired. Your grandfather was full with living, like a child playing, only even more. He seemed like he was really part of this world, the way he saw the butterflies and the garter snakes sliding between the different flowers growing in the tall grass. Later, I sometimes thought that Trail Kaler could maybe have been part fox or something, the way he seemed right at home among the Ayasapa. He led me along a path beside the water, a path maybe made by a deer or some Indians long ago, he said. Trail didn't hurry himself as he pulled me along, but he wouldn't let go my hand neither, even though it was a warm day and it was getting sweaty between our skins. I wondered where he was leading me. I hadn't ever thought much about what might be outside our darp. I knew just our yard and the darp, and I had never even been to the Red River that Mary's Creek runs into. I can't remember everything Trail showed me along that creek. I know the berries weren't ripe yet, but the blossoms were long gone already. We saw squirrels in the oak trees, and he showed me an owl sleeping on a dead branch and a beaver dam that had backed the water up to make a pond. And it was after the dam that Trail told me to take my shoes off so we could walk through the water to the other side. I was happy for sure that it was a hot day and that we women had been able to get away without putting on Sunday stockings for church. In those days, even young women didn't go around with bare legs showing almost all the way like now. Still, I had to lift my dress up over the knees to walk through the water, and the water was cold, and the bottom was soft mud, and the toes sank down into it, and by the time we got to the other side, our ankles were black half to the knee. But Trail showed me a board we could stand on and wash the mud off from our feet before we put our shoes back on. He led me up the path, and then we were in a big field of high grass, some high past our waists. Most of the grass had seeds already, and there were flowers too, yellow and blue. Trail led me where the grass had been stepped down, but not stepped through to the earth yet. Then I saw the Zoudeshend. I had heard of such things. Mama had said her family had lived in a sod house when they first to Gutenthal came, but nobody still had one, not even for a barn. I mean, that was long ago when they first came, and for sure they only lived in the Zoudeshend long enough to get through the first winter, and then the men cut wood so they could build houses. But here was a sod house so new that the grass on the roof was still green. Around the house was a patch of ground where the sod had been cut from, and I could see the rows that had been planted for a garden. Who lives in such a place, I said. A man's home is his castle, Trail said, and he pushed open the door and pulled me inside, where it smelled of earth and felt cool after the hot outside. 2 windows shone blocks of light on the earth floor, the sun side one brighter than the other one. Once my eyes got used to the almost dark, I saw a table with 2 chairs, a 2-person bed, and a cook stove with a pipe leading up through the roof. A schrank closet beside the bed had the door closed so I couldn't see inside. I thought right away that this Zoudeshend was cleaned up pretty good for a bachelor, though for sure I had never been visiting by a bachelor before. The inside walls were covered with rough boards that looked almost new, and the roof was made from poles that Trail said he had earned himself when he worked for the Lutheran carpenter in Gretna. That was the first time I heard about this Lutheran carpenter. Redai latirisha bumesta dich, I wanted to know. Talked this Lutheran carpenter German. Juditsch, Trail said. High German. Flat he understood, too. But mostly we talked Juditsch because in school, Principal Evert wouldn't let us talk flat German. So we only talked it in the back house or on the street if we could get away. Funny thing, when I went to live with the Lutheran carpenter, I talked more Juditsch than if I had stayed in the boarding school. Evert didn't like it when I moved out of the school, and he almost wouldn't let me still come to class. But I brought it by to him that the only way I could stay in school anyways was if I could work off my room and board by the carpenter. And when I told him yet that I would be talking High German all the time too, he let me go. Besides, my family had moved already to Mexico, and he knew that the only thing stopping me from going too was that I wanted to go to school. As Trail talked, I wondered how it could feel if a person's family all moved away far to another land and left him alone by himself. He told me how his little brother Tichel's dog had followed the wagon to the train station and wouldn't come home when the train started moving. Trail said the dog jumped up onto the ladder on the end of a boxcar and somehow climbed up to the roof. The people laughing from the ground had laughed themselves over this stupid dog, but Trail said it had been hard for him to see how that dog wouldn't let his people go. But he, Trail, could. But if I had gone to Mexico, I wouldn't be sitting here in this Zoudish end with such a beautiful annual märtja, he said. And then he took me around with his arm so fast and kissed me on the mouth so that I almost verschlucked myself. I hadn't ever thought about all the spit there could be in a kiss. And they must have had Schintjefleisch for dinner at Galtar Schnitz's place. And the red fuzz under his nose tickled my lip a little bit. And I never figured a kiss could take such a long time. And I didn't know if I was supposed to like this or even let this to happen. And my heart was clappering, and I closed my eyes, and my grandmother, Glautje Sush, sat up in her coffin again and said, loud enough for me to hear, "De kramme nese pausen noch van ungefähr taub." Those crooked noses fit yet almost together. Then all of a sudden I felt a shadow move over us where we were sitting on Trail's bed. My eyes opened, and I saw something at the window. Trail felt it too. The shadow at the window moved away. Trail let me go and hurried outside. I was too scared to move. He came back in and said it had maybe been the fox that lived on the other end of his land. I believed him then, but later when I got home late for milking, I wondered. I thought I saw Preacher Funk in his long black coat on the Darpskaus, walking away like he had maybe been visiting by our place. And I shivered myself over that shadow again. Thank you.